I was taking that for the thumbnail, but I forgot that it's not on the picture mode. Hold on. Hi everyone, I'm Bakht and I talk about books. So I'm doing a book haul for you today. I went to the bookstore after, I don't know, a century. I don't know, after a long, long time. And it felt very nice. I went with my brother and we spent a long time there. And these are the books that I got. I'm going to talk a little bit about them. Of course, I've not really read them. I've read 50 pages of one of them and like 3 pages of another. But yeah, I'm just going to introduce you to them. And then as I finish them, I'll get to it. Firstly, Brave New World by Aldous Huxley. I've heard a lot about this. I think everybody has heard a lot about this. And in fact, it was one of my subscribers, I believe some months ago, who recommended Brave New World to me. I think it was somebody who asked, oh, have you read Brave New World? And I felt very ignorant. And because I've done reviews on books like Fahrenheit 451 and 1984, it seems like something down my alley. So apparently Aldous Huxley has written a ton of novels, but this is the most well-known of all of them. And it was written some 20 years before Orwell wrote 1984. And oddly enough, Aldous Huxley was an English author. George Orwell was also an English author. And I read somewhere, funnily enough, that Aldous Huxley was George Orwell's French teacher in school. Like, isn't that funny? And then when George Orwell published 1984, he wrote a letter or something to Aldous Huxley, and I think he sent him a free copy, and he asked for a sort of, I don't know, critical advice or feedback or something like that. But yeah, I'm going to read this, and then I'm going to... So this novel is, I think that it was originally meant to be a kind of mockery or a parody of A.G. Wells's novels, because Aldous Huxley didn't like A.G. Wells and his style of writing. I can't imagine why, because I'm a big fan of A.G. Wells, so I don't know. There's no accounting for taste. But I think maybe, I don't know, generational gap or something. He didn't like A.G. Wells, so he wanted to mock many of the concepts that A.G. Wells came up with, like, time machines and space travel. But then it got away from him, and he ended up with this book. So it's sort of, I've heard that it's kind of playful and sardonic, as opposed to the really sort of dingy kind of existence that you have in 1984. 1984 is... It's kind of, I wouldn't say dark exactly, but it's more like it's dingy, lifeless, gray. Obviously that is the purpose, one would imagine, when, you're talking about a victim of a totalitarian state. That would generally be the atmosphere you would go with. But it is like that. It's kind of unfulfilling in a way. I mean, of course I like it for its tremendous historical importance and how it's literally, part of the English language now. But from a literary standpoint, there are a few things missing, I would say. So I'm curious to know if this is any better. Just going to read the blurb. It is a perfect world. You have everything you could wish for. There is no violence. Babies are made in laboratories. Your daily dose of soma keeps depression away. You can watch Feely to stimulate your senses. You live in a man-made heaven. So what if the world controllers manipulate to discourage critical thinking and individual action and initiative? It's for your own good. Old, imperfect life still exists in some savage reservations. Can Marx find a cure for his distress? Marx is apparently the main character. Is that like a play on Karl Marx or something? Who knows? Anyways, I'll definitely be reading this, and I'll keep you posted. The Wretched of the Earth by Frantz Fanon. So this is a seminal classic of anti-colonial non-fiction. So Fanon, who himself was a psychiatrist, did extensive study of, the phenomenon, or the link, or the correlation, as you call it in research methodology, the correlation between colonial war and colonial occupation and imperialism, and the link between that and mental disease. I sure took long enough to get to that point. Do I need, cognitive enhancement pills or something? My memory is going. So he called it So colonial war, colonial occupation on one hand, mental disease in the natives on the other hand. I think either he referred to it, or it's the industry term, the psychopathology of colonialism. So this was written during the Algerian War of Independence, but of course, for obvious reasons, it seems to be a very, very relevant and essential text for just about anyone living in the modern world, one would think. But especially for people that live in countries that were colonized, where I live, South Asia, colonized by the British for nearly 200 years. So for that reason, of course, many things are. But I think this would be interesting for anyone. I mean, I can't imagine why it wouldn't be. Fanon, unfortunately, he died very early at the age of 36 from leukemia, which is a type of blood cancer, I believe. And so there's very little to go on. I think he only wrote 2 or 3 books, maybe, as far as I'm aware. So there's very little that remains of this, genius mind, as it were. So we have to make do with what we have. And The Wretched of the Earth is a good start. I've only read the introduction so far, so I'm definitely going to get into it and then do a proper video because I don't want to start rambling when I don't know enough. The Russian Revolution, A New History by Sean McMeekin. I'm not familiar with the author, but when I saw this title, I was anyone who watches my channel would know that We the Living by Ayn Rand is like my favorite novel of all time, for better or for worse. I'm not saying that it's the best novel out there, but it's my favorite, and I read it 2 weeks ago again for probably the 100th time, and I cried again for 2 days. I don't know what that novel does to me. It just sends me spiraling into a deep depression, but I still go back to it. So yeah, since the Russian Revolution is the backdrop of that novel, you can imagine that I had a great deal of interest in it. And then, of course, everyone of my generation at least, grew up watching, that animated movie Anastasia. So we were all like, oh, what's happened? That whole context of the monarchy having been slaughtered, and then there's a new type of government and whatever else. Of course, it's not true. Anastasia never did survive. She was found not far from the mass grave where her family was found. So she never. The animation is a lie. So from what I've deduced so far, I've read about 40 pages already. A great portion of it is dedicated to the build-up towards the Russian Revolution. So all the politics, the poor governance, Tsar Nicholas II's horribly incompetent behavior and policies, and he apparently, historians believe, he wasn't the brightest tool in the shed, or is it the sharpest tool in the shed? So yeah, he did a ton of stuff wrong, and sped along the general dissatisfaction and disillusionment with the monarchy. And then I've already reached this part in which had he just agreed to a constitutional monarchy, the kind that exists in England, had he just agreed to the concept in time, there wouldn't have even been a need for him to abdicate and subsequently die. But he was very stubborn. He was very obsessed with the idea of power, and it's an incredibly interesting subject. So let me know if you'd like me to finish this and talk about it. I don't know if this is the sort of thing that interests anyone, because I talk to people about stuff like this, about revolutions or history or the World War II, and they just stare at my face. It's as if nobody else finds this interesting. So either there's something wrong with me or. Educated by Tara Westover. This book was blowing up Instagram all of last year. Or Bookstagram rather. And I think even people that weren't interested in books heard in some way or description about Educated by Tara Westover. And this is a memoir, an incredibly powerful memoir from what I've heard. And I've heard so many good things about it from people whose opinion I really trust that, of course, I had to pick it up. And it's surprising that I hadn't done so before. I'm just going to read off the blurb here. Tara Westover and her family grew up preparing for the end of days, but according to the government, she didn't exist. So was it like an end of days cult or something? She hadn't been registered for a birth certificate. She had no school records because she'd never set foot in a classroom, and no medical records because her father didn't believe in hospitals. As she grew older, her father became more radical and her brother more violent. At 16, she had to leave home. In doing so, she discovered the power of education and the price she had to pay for it. I'm sorry if I missed like a few words here and there because I've lost my glasses and I'm using my old ones which seem to fall off my head, so which they're not very comfortable. So whatever I say is at most an approximation. Immortality by Milan Kundera. This was translated from the original Czech version. I don't know a ton about Milan Kundera. I know that he was banned. His books were banned in 1989, I believe, during the communist regime of Czechoslovakia, and he was exiled and he went to France, where I think he still lives. And I think he's better known for the novel The Incredible Lightness of Being, but for the life of me, I couldn't find that anywhere. And I wanted to. So this is more of an experiment. I want to read something from someone who I've, never read before. Maybe I'm just looking for a magical experience. Now, this book, the DK Big Book of Philosophy, now I didn't buy this, my brother bought it, but I thought it was such an incredible idea. These DK Big Books, they come on almost every subject, I think: law, sociology, science, economics, even literature, in fact. And what they are is basically like, it's a very, very organized way of, they tell you about all the major, or many, at any rate, many major philosophers, starting all the way from the ancient world, the medieval world, the Renaissance, Revolution, contemporary philosophy. So it's like, but they've done it very well. It's kind of like, and it's actually, ironically, it's not actually meant for kids. It's for like regular people, as if there's kids and regular people. But yeah, it's meant for like normal adults and everything. Of course, I've read stuff like The Story of Philosophy by, who was it? Will Durant. It's a really old one. But if somebody was just beginning, or they're wanting to, brush up on any principles or something like that, I mean, this sort of thing would be incredibly useful. So I just thought I'd throw that in there, because I've seen these DK books around and they're easily available everywhere. And I think they're such a great idea. Yeah. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me. Please consider subscribing. I'm going to be making a ton of videos on these books, on other books that I'm trying to read at the moment, trying to kind of fit in the time with a busy life. That's what I perhaps despise most about the modern world, that you don't have time for things that matter. If you're working, you have a taxing day job, as I do, you don't have time for your loved ones or for reading books, and those are the things that matter in life. So, but yeah, I'm going to take out the time. Thank you so much for joining me. Please take care of yourselves. I hope you're keeping safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.